Guardians of Dominion, Zeus reporting with intelligence you cannot afford to ignore. Something unexpected is forming beneath the surface of Hero Wars, a titan that looks simple, yet quietly bends battles in ways most players won't recognize until it's too late. Today, you'll see the mechanic that could redefine survivability. And why those who understand it first will control the fight before it even begins. If you're starting a new Hero Wars account, use my affiliate link in the description for a powerful early boost, 1000 emeralds, 255,000 gold, Hero Orion, and 70 of his soul stones. After creating your account, activate the codes Aiden or Olympus ORION within your first 10 days to accelerate your progress from day 1. At first glance, Tidus looks almost too simple, and that is exactly why many players are about to misread him. Pause for a moment and think about how often the strongest mechanics in Hero Wars hide behind straightforward descriptions. This is one of those cases, and if you only see the surface, you will completely miss why this titan is quietly built to influence fights. Let's start with Gelokinesis, because what it does immediately sounds powerful, but the real impact reveals itself only when you understand the battlefield consequence. The moment Tidus summons Gelo, every ally is healed for over 2 million health. Not split across the team. Not diluted. Each titan receives the full amount individually. Now picture that inside a real fight. A front line that looked pressured suddenly stabilizes, and the enemy's opening burst begins losing its purpose. But here is where most players will misunderstand the mechanic. If a titan is already at maximum health, the heal does not apply. On paper, that sounds like a limitation. It isn't. In fact, the true strength of this ability appears seconds later, and this is the part you do not want to overlook. Because the value of Gelo is not only in the summon. It is in what happens when Gelo disappears. Even if the enemy destroys Gelo by damaging Tidus, the moment Gelo falls, every titan is healed again for another 2 million health. Let that sink in. One summon can generate a potential 4 million healing cycle. Now stop and picture the psychological effect this creates in battle. The enemy commits damage. Cooldowns are spent. Momentum is building, and suddenly the entire health landscape resets. What looked like progress becomes wasted effort. This is where fights quietly flip. Let's translate that into real numbers so the implication becomes clear. Take Angus, sitting around 18 million health. Each 2 million heal represents roughly 11% of his total health. One trigger on summon, another when Gelo disappears, that is about 22% restored during a single cycle. That is no longer sustain. That is battlefield correction. Ignore a mechanic like this, and you risk extending fights long enough for water compositions to outlast you. But the scaling becomes even more dangerous when you look at titans with lower health pools. Consider Vulcan at roughly 6 million health. Now each heal jumps to about 33%. When both triggers occur, you are approaching 66% restored. Pause here, because this detail matters. From the enemy perspective, you are not damaging a target anymore. You are chasing a health bar that refuses to collapse. Resources disappear, ultimates lose efficiency, and tempo starts slipping away. And tempo, more than anything, decides high-level battles. Once you recognize that Gelo's healing ranges from roughly 11% to potentially 66% depending on the titan, one conclusion becomes difficult to ignore: Tidus is not designed for a narrow role. He is engineered for flexibility. Expect serious players to experiment with him across multiple combinations very quickly. But healing alone is not what makes Gelokinesis strategically threatening. There is another layer here that many will underestimate early, and it may be the part that accelerates kills rather than prevents them. Enemies within Gelo's aura who lose more than 10% of their maximum health from a single attack are inflicted with Fragility, increasing all damage they receive by 50% for 5 seconds. The moment you hear 50% increased damage, alarms should already be sounding. Now this is where things start becoming dangerous. Yes, the comparison to the Ice Age totem is natural, but the differences matter. Ice Age delivers a longer, more consistent vulnerability window, while Fragility can be reapplied in separate moments, extending the overall period where enemies remain exposed. And exposed targets do not survive coordinated pressure. Here is the critical detail: Fragility applies individually. It does not automatically blanket the entire enemy team. Only those who cross the 10% damage threshold are marked. So the real question becomes, how often does that threshold get triggered? More often than most players expect. Picture Eden throwing a rock into the enemy formation. Multiple titans drop past that threshold simultaneously. Instantly, they begin taking amplified damage. Totems hit harder. Follow-up abilities hit harder. Even moderate attacks start producing lethal outcomes. This is where synergy stops being theoretical and starts becoming visible. During testing, I ran Tidus alongside Hyperion in multiple compositions: earth, fire, even dark, and the pattern kept repeating. Higher damage output. Stronger battlefield presence. Noticeably improved stain. At some point, you stop calling it coincidence. You start recognizing a signal. If this trend continues, and early testing strongly suggests it will, water may be positioning itself as one of the most contested elements moving forward. Now let's move to Tidus's second skill, Spiritual Bond, Water, because this is where team building math quietly changes. When Tidus and Gelo merge into a torrent, they count as 2 water titans for totem activation. Let that sink in for a moment. Suddenly, reaching activation thresholds becomes significantly easier. In practical terms, Tidus plus just one additional water titan can activate the water totem. If you have ever struggled to balance elements while preserving damage and survivability, you already understand how strategically valuable that is. But there is another advantage layered beneath it. While Gelo is on the battlefield, they generate 20% more energy in combat. Faster energy means faster totem activation. Faster activation means earlier pressure. And early pressure is often what prevents fights from ever stabilizing. However, and pay attention here, that extra energy disappears when Gelo is no longer present. Protecting the summon is not just about healing anymore. It becomes a tempo decision. This is the kind of mechanic that rewards disciplined players. Timing, positioning, and awareness start separating strong commanders from reactive ones. Now, this summoner concept is not entirely new. We have seen echoes of it with Verdok and Asherona. But familiarity can be misleading, because the battlefield results here are telling a different story. What surprised me most did not come from theory. It came from testing. Previously, I showed water defeating earth teams, something that already challenged long-standing expectations. But while preparing this analysis, another result forced me to stop and retest simply to confirm it was not luck. Inside Clash of Worlds, in the Gates of Nature building where enemies gain 40% resistance under an Earth setup, I ran Hyperion and Tidus alongside 3 Fire Titans. On paper, that composition should struggle. Yet on manual control, the Gates of Nature fell. Not once. Repeatedly. That is the moment you stop thinking in terms of randomness and start recognizing structural strength. Now, this is not effortless. Manual timing is critical, especially activating the fire totem precisely when the earth barrier appears. Mistime it, and the attempt collapses. And yes, some unpredictability remains when combining fire and light elements. But the fact that this strategy works at all tells us something important. When a Titan begins performing outside traditional elemental expectations, it often signals the early phase of a meta shift. Not noise. A shift. So begin adjusting your radar. Prepare to see more water. Prepare to see Tidus far more often. Because once players recognize the stability, pressure, and flexibility he introduces into a fight, ignoring him will stop being a choice, and start becoming a mistake. Tidus is sending a clear signal, even before most players get their hands on him. This is not just another Titan release, it is a shift in battlefield dynamics. Between massive healing, fragility-driven damage spikes, and faster totem activation, Tidus brings control, endurance, and strategic flexibility. The commanders who prepare early will not be surprised by the meta. They will shape it. Now I want your perspective. Based on what you've seen today, where do you think Tidus will fit? Which combinations are you already planning? Share your predictions in the comments and let's think ahead as a community. Like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so your strategy always evolves before the battlefield does. Prepare before the war begins, because victory favors the strategist, not the spectator.